When it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, there are a few very important players on this team. We know that. The big four up there on top. Tavares, Marner, Matthews, and Nylander. These guys are the guys who will be facing all the scrutiny, all the hardships, and all the rewards if the Leafs do poorly or if the Leafs do successfully. That's kind of how it always goes in Toronto. Lots of pressure on the top dogs at the team, especially the ones who are expected to score all the goals. The defense, hey, all eyes are going to be on Morgan Rielly. Everybody kind of knows that this guy's good, but can he be even better? Can he continue being as good? People are going to be talking about the new additions, Wayne Simmons, Joe Thornton, all that stuff. Obviously, the middlemen in the middle of the lineup are also going to be important as well, but when it comes to the back end, the very back end, Frederik Andersen, he's probably a very important name too. And it's gotten to such an incredible, critical point, as mentioned by Luke Fox on Sportsnet, that heading into this 2021 campaign, what happens with the back end, what happens with Freddie Andersen is probably one of the more important situations the Toronto Maple Leafs have on their team as a whole. Because if you take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs and their goaltending, I was going to use the word tandem, but I guess tandem is not the right word to use now. Let's use the word situation. Freddie Andersen, who is indeed in his last year of his contract, is going to have all eyes on him. Because if you take a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs and their overall organizational makeup, you see who they have in net. Well, they actually have quite a few not terrible players. Steve Dangle said this on the same video I'm referencing where Luke Fox said his thing, but the Maple Leafs goaltending duo, tandem, situation, it got better. Jack Campbell is now a backup who might have the potential of stealing some starts here and there from Freddie Andersen. You have Aaron Dell, whom you acquired earlier in the year as well, not to mention Michael Hutchinson, who's coming back. These guys are all cheap, these guys are all here, and these guys, most of them at least, are going to be sticking around for at least a year or two. Freddie Andersen, in his position where he is at $5 million on an expiring contract, does not have that stability, because all eyes are on him. Everybody's going to be taking a look at Freddie Andersen and saying, okay, if this guy can prove that he is the number one Maple Leafs goaltender who can stay consistently at a number one, which is a scenario that's not guaranteed, only then will we see Freddie Andersen actually be re-signed to a contract. Only then will we see Andersen stick around with this squad, because if you take a look at what was mentioned on this program over here, Luke Fox said it himself, Freddie Andersen has been in a position where he was in the trade talks. Freddie Andersen was out there being dangled by Kyle Dubas to other NHL GMs because Dubas was looking towards trading Freddie Andersen. We spoke about that a ton on this YouTube channel over here, which is why it's kind of a big thing to note. Here's an article from NHLTradeTalk.com talking about what exactly Fox says on this video talking about Freddie Andersen. He notes that Andersen himself is feeling the heat, considering he's been the second best goalie in every single one of the 4 playoff series he's lost as their starter. Andersen has let in some back-breaking goals, and in a shortened 56-game season, the Leafs simply cannot afford to stumble. This is where Steve Dangle's point comes in as well, because with all the other backup support, all the other guys on the team that might actually be interested in stealing a job or who might actually be capable of doing that, this puts Andersen in a spot where it's do or die. Either he's the number one undisputably, or he's getting shipped out. He's getting traded. He's not getting re-signed. He's probably going to get traded straight up, because if at some point in the regular season it becomes painfully obvious that Freddie Andersen is not going to re-sign with the Maple Leafs, or we'll put it the other way around, the Leafs are just not going to sign Freddie Andersen to another contract, there's no use in having this guy back on your squad. If a guy like Jack Campbell or a guy like Aaron Dell or Michael Hutchinson is good enough to replace him as a number one starter, which I don't want to say is likely, but it's somewhat possible, you have 3 guys over there, then we may see a Freddie Andersen trade before that trade deadline, which I don't know if it's going to be in February. It's probably not going to be, right? We're probably going to move the trade deadline and all that stuff. We might see a Freddie Andersen trade actually take place. And with all the stuff that we've had before, it really wouldn't surprise me if that happens. Like, we saw Kyle Dubas literally dangling out Andersen's name earlier on the trade talks. There wasn't anything that was done, but among those names, we saw guys like Kapanen, we saw guys like Andreas Janssen, we saw guys like Alex Kerfoot and Freddie Andersen all being dangled out there. No pun intended with the Steve Dangle collaboration as well in this topic, but Andersen's still around. And Andersen is actually playing on a much better goaltending situation than he was last year. Dangle mentioned this in the video, but last year, were we having a conversation where a guy like Jack Campbell or Michael Hutchinson or Aaron Dell could steal that number one spot? No, we weren't having this conversation. Andersen was the guy last year. Andersen was the be-all and end-all last year for the Maple Leafs, and now we're in a position where the Leafs' goaltending situation has gotten better, such to the point that an Andersen being the number one isn't the only realistic scenario heading into the new year. So now, taking a look at where Andersen is in his NHL career, he's 31 years old with 1 year remaining and 1 year left to prove that he is the number one in Toronto, bar none, and that he has what it takes to keep a stranglehold around that number one starter spot in Toronto. It's just kind of funny because if you don't have a Freddie Andersen next year, I guess, you could say he's traded or whatever for a goalie or prospects or picks or whatever. Next year, you have Michael Hutchinson signed to a $725,000 deal. Jack Campbell is out here with a $1.65 million deal. You have Aaron Dell, who expires, but he's making $800,000. He's not going to request a whole bunch of money. I mean, unless he all of a sudden becomes the undisputed number one. He takes over the reins of a Freddie Andersen full-time. He plays, 30 games and he wins them all. That's not really going to happen anytime soon. So, for Leafs fans out there watching this video, talk to me in the comments what you think about the Frederik Andersen criticality, I'm not too sure, criticalness, the critical nature of Frederik Andersen's final year in his contract, because it's do or die right here, folks. If he doesn't prove that he is undisputably the number one, he's not going to be on this team next year. Straight up. And let's say we have a season where the guys all split the load, Andersen plays the equal amount of games as all the other guys, and Andersen is slightly better than the rest in terms of the numbers, but then all of a sudden in the postseason, this guy comes out here and he craps the bed again. I don't know if he's coming back. Like, he really needs to show himself off as the best version of Andersen we've ever seen in the NHL if he wants to stick around. And that might and probably does include winning a playoff series, because if they're not able to do it, it means the other goaltender was better. Straight up. Rarely do you have a situation where the better goaltender loses in the playoffs, in a 7-game, 5-game series or whatever. So, if the Maple Leafs stop scoring, the critique is going to be, well, Andersen let in a few other goals compared to the other guy's goaltender who didn't let in any. If the Maple Leafs score a whole bunch of goals but they get outshot and they still lose, the critique is going to be, well, Andersen just let in more goals than the other goalie. So, there really is a no-win situation here if you're looking for Freddie Andersen to stay with the Toronto Maple Leafs that involves the Maple Leafs not winning a playoff series. And winning a playoff series with Andersen as that guy. If Hutchinson comes in here and he steals the net like he did for Colorado when they had all those injuries to the goaltenders, and it's all of a sudden Michael Hutchinson who's winning playoff series with Toronto and whatever, you don't need Freddie Andersen. You're re-signing this guy. No, you're not doing that. So, unless Freddie Andersen takes over, I'm putting my stick in the ground right here. I'm saying he's not sticking around. So, for Leafs fans out there, talk to me in the comments what you think about this idea. I'll leave a link in the description to the video I'm referring to. It's a video with Sean McKenzie, with Steve Dangle, with Luke Fox, and they talk about this Frederik Andersen thing. But if you made it all the way to the end of the video over here, comment down something funny. Let's see, what's a funny thing to talk about? Just comment Vesa Toskala if you made it down to the end of the video, talking about iconic Toronto Maple Leafs goaltenders. Yeah, Vesa Toskala, that's a great one. So comment down below if you made it to the end, but also let me know your thoughts on this whole Freddie Andersen situation because it is very interesting to me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sure, that's 99. And bye.